Hey, everybody, welcome to Under the Arch Sports. I'm Eric Hobbs.
And I'm David Woldingen.
And guys, football season's here. So let's talk a little Mizzou football and just kind of preview the season, the team, and, we'll just see where this conversation kind of goes. First, as you guys go ahead, subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on Facebook, Instagram, and the artist formerly known as Twitter. All right. So, David, yeah, I mean, this is an interesting year for Missouri. I feel like you can say that any year, but there is a universe in which Drinkwitz is fired after this season. I think that's obvious. And there's also a universe where Missouri has broken through and is viewed as a team that is knocking on the door being a top 25 program. So depending on how things shake out, it could be doomsday or elation for the fan base.
Yeah, and I think the first 6 games are going to be very important to this team too, mainly for recruiting, because we have our hand in some top recruits that could potentially commit to Mizzou, and it's put up or shut up time for Drink. And if he goes on a run here at the beginning of the season, it could really grab some attention from those top recruits.
Yeah, namely the two 5 stars in state, Ryan Wingo and Williams Winery. Yeah, Missouri, the schedule is very backloaded, so they got to take advantage of the front of the schedule. The Kansas State game is going to be huge. That's third game of the year. That's going to be tough. Kansas State 17th in the coaches poll preseason. Then LSU game number 6, I believe it is. Missouri has to be 4-1 going into that LSU game. Anything worse, and you're starting at 500 halfway through, a good chance of it. 3-3 with Georgia and Tennessee and other more difficult games left on the schedule, and that's not a good outlook for the Tigers to get to that 4-1 mark and beyond. David, it starts with the offense.
Absolutely. A couple of things Mizzou's done on the offseason is they've tried to boost up the depth a little bit on the offensive line, and that's going to be really key to start out the season. Not even touching the quarterback subject right now, because of course, I mean, we all know what's going on there, but we'll get into that in a bit. If we can have somewhat solid offensive line play, and what I mean by that is being able to actually open up holes and run the ball and maybe create a balanced offense, it will take a lot of pressure off our defense and give them the rest they need, and so they don't gas out in some of these games, because we have a really, really solid defense this year, I believe.
Yeah, I think for the offensive line, pass protection a year ago was decent. Improvement there would be great, yes. But they got to get pushed running the ball. Think about how often Missouri had a run play that went for a loss. It was incredible. Perhaps the worst in the country. They were among the worst, if not the absolute worst.
Specifically on a 3rd and 1.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. They got no push. They constantly got blown off the ball, the offensive line did, and the running backs had no chance. So any sort of progress there would be gigantic. And as you alluded to, with Missouri having a stout defense, think about how highly everyone thought of them a year ago. But then think about how many times they were put in no-win situations where the offense would turn it over deep in their own territory, or, they would just go 3 and out after 3 and out, and the defense would be out there for 40, 45 minutes a game. The offense just hung out to dry so much. If they can get any sort of support from the offense, it just makes the defense that much better.
Well, and to put it into perspective, the offense, just looking at the schedule from last year and who we played and our overall win and loss record, if you look at some of those losses, they were within 7 points. We had at least 3, maybe 4 losses that were within 7 points, right within the grasp of victory. But because we had no sustainable offense at all, we lost those games.
Well, I
So
mean, yeah, this team's close. You think about Auburn, the Mevis chip shot that was missed to go to overtime, and then Nate Pete, stretching out fumbling when they had first and goal. So you have that. You have the Kentucky debacle with the roughing the kicker 40 yards behind the line of scrimmage. That rule has changed. There's a new rule in place to specifically account for situations like that, mercifully. And then even the Georgia game. I mean, granted that one's a little flukier because talking Georgia, but the team was there. They were that close. Yeah, I think you have to consider the Vandy game was close as well. But Mizzou had, they were able to hang on to that one. But this team was close to being an 8-14. They were. Yes, it is an optimistic view, but it's also true. So yeah, any sort of push offensively, offensive line specifically, it's going to be monumental. And I think there's reason to hope that the offensive line will be better.
Yeah. And now you're talking about rotating guys in and out, keeping guys fresh throughout the game and doing what you need to do.
Yeah, I mean,
now, Eric,
you look at depth and you're talking about Mitchell Walters being a lot of time starter. He's not even really on the 2 deep this year.
Right.
So, I mean, I picked on him a lot this year. I guess I'm picking on him now, but it's a sign that there's more depth because let's face it, he's struggling.
Now, getting to the meat of our offense, talk about quarterback play, Eric.
Oh, yeah.
We got the battle going on right now. It's an open battle. Still with a nod more towards Brady Cook, but who knows? That could easily change. If he ends up starting the first couple of games, that Kansas State game might be defining whether he stays our starter or if we switch to someone else.
Yeah, there's a lot of reports that we won't really know who the starter is going to be for real until that Kansas State game. The first 2 games, South Dakota and Middle Tennessee State. I think you're going to see a lot of rotation, a lot of guys getting reps, and not just throwing somebody out there in mop-up duty. There might be some serious rotation just to see, when the lights are on, who's going to perform. It's interesting. All accounts, by all accounts, Brady Cook is improved. Well, that makes sense because he's playing with not a torn labrum, right? So there's that. And he's just improving. Jake Garcia's looking good. Sam Horn, still probably the most gifted guy back there, but it's just a matter of him putting it together. So, yeah, I think you lean Brady Cook right now based on what people are hearing, but what's that mean? It's tough to say.
Well, it's worth noting that also we have an offensive coordinator who, at the end of the season, when he started taking over, started using Brady Cook's legs and using his other tangible abilities to move the ball. If he continues that trend, I'm really interested to see what this offense looks like as they start getting into the season with this offensive coordinator, because now you're talking about, are they going to open up to the tight ends, mix and match, and do more things with Brady Cook or whoever the quarterback is, especially if you have a line who can do a better job of blocking, opening up holes, things like that. It's going to be real interesting to see the calls that are being made and execution, honestly.
Well, and you mentioned tight end. I think that's something that could be, it was not non-existent a year ago, and a lot of that had to do with Missouri's offensive line being so terrible. They had to stay on the line and help block. If the line can block better, then you're opening up options for the tight ends to go out and actually run routes and be an option, be a threat. And you're looking at Max WHISNER and true freshman Brett Norfleet as kind of your 2 go-to guys, it seems. And Yeah, I think there's an opportunity for tight ends to be involved in the passing game. And that's a dimension that the offense just didn't have. They had, what, 10 catches, 2 touchdowns as a unit, tight ends a year ago. So, yeah, that's something that I think makes it harder for defenses to prepare for because you
As,
didn't have to account for tight ends a year ago.
Especially when they're trying to like double team Burden and
Yeah.
some of those guys. If you include the tight end in there, now you have one more player you have to cover. That just opens everybody up to the passing game.
Yeah, and you have Luther Burden going to move in to Dominic Lovett's old spot. Dominic Lovett transferring to Georgia, and that's a huge loss, right? But you're able to replace him with Luther Burden moving into the slot. There's potential there for that to be a wash or even an improvement, potentially. Just Luther Burden showed flashes. It's just a matter of getting him the ball in a position to make guys miss, right? And I think he'll have more of an opportunity, just given the types of routes he'll be running out in the slot instead of being on the outside and having Theo Weiss out there. Probably, I think he'll be kind of the go-to guy out there. I'm interested to see Mekhi Miller. He showed flashes as a freshman. Could end up being that safety blanket of we just gotta get across for a first down. Mekhi Miller could be your guy there. There are a lot of bodies with a lot of potential. It's just, right now, Luther Burden is probably the closest thing you got to a proven commodity in the wide receiver room.
Yeah. Now, Eric, running back situation. What's going on there?
Well, Cody Schrader, Nate Peat, they're your 1 and 2. I think he has a higher ceiling than Schrader. I think Schrader's probably steadier. Pete's his problem a year ago was he tried to dance and juke. And a lot of that had to do with the offensive line just being turnstiles last year, and he had no choice. But if he can just get in a better habit of getting north-south, I think he can be a lot more effective than he was a year ago. I'm still waiting for Tavares Jones to break through. But even the freshman Roberts has been showing signs, at least again, Power Mizzou reporting that people are impressed with him. So I think you're going to see again kind of a running back by committee. You won't see Schrader or Peter, anybody else, I think, have a workload like Roundtree or Beatty in years past. And again, to a certain extent, they are dependent on the offensive line because there's nobody there who's good enough to overcome a struggling offensive line like Missouri had a year ago. Now, defensively, there's less questions. That's why so much of this video has been about the offense, right? Because the defense returning 9 starters. You have the entire secondary that had the chance to perform at an all-conference level. Both corners, Ennis Rakestraw and Chris Abrams-Drain, are viewed as NFL guys. I think, you lose Martez Manuel, yes, but Dalen Cardinell still played a significant number of snaps in that star position. So it's almost like you're not losing a starter there. I don't count it as losing a starter. That's why I got 9 as my returning starters. Defensive end is the one question, David. And I think you're looking at Joe Moore and Johnny Walker Jr. being your 2 DNs. Maybe Darius Robinson moving out there a little bit. We'll see how much he does that. There's been talk he may, and then talk, well, maybe not. But I think those are your guys to look at defensive end.
Yeah, and I know they have a lot of guys at defensive end, but we need a couple to step up and take control. So we don't have to move anybody from the inside to the outside. I mean, if you can avoid that and just keep those guys rotated in there, get them experience, it will only benefit Mizzou in the future, especially because of how experienced this defense is after this year. They are going to be losing a lot of guys. So I'm looking more at the second string who can get playing time and experience and prep, not only to give a step this year, but next year.
yeah, I think you hope that Joe Moore, the Arizona State transfer from, I believe, Cardinal Ritter in St. Louis, it's from St. Louis, I think it's Cardinal Ritter. Yeah, I think you look for him to be a, a key pass rusher. That's the one thing the Missouri's defense was not that great at a year ago, was rushing the passer. So you want to add that element just to make it easier on the secondary, right? Yeah, any secondary, if they have to cover long enough, is going to get beat somewhere.
Yeah,
So,
Tennessee proved that.
I mean, get pressure on the quarterback. That's the missing link for this defense to take that step and perhaps be a top 15 type defense. Um, I mean, you look at linebacker and you're rock solid with Tyron Hopper, among the best returning linebackers in the SEC, and Chad Bailey, who has been rock solid. So I mean, guys, the defense is there's just not that many questions. It's keep doing what you're doing, take the next step, get better. That's really all it is. I mean, D tackle's the one spot we haven't really talked about. Well, if you watch our summer preview series, they're returning the top 5 defensive tackles. So yeah, aside from defensive end, your edge rushers, it's take the next step, improve, do more of what you did last year. And then, David, to wrap this up, special teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, Harrison Mevis is the one known commodity, and we all know what he's capable of. He's got a howitzer attached to his hip, and it's all about just consistency. He had some misses a year ago. Just maybe some confidence issues after the Auburn shank, but we'll see. I think you assume that you're going to be pretty good in the kicking game.
One
Punting.
thing worth noting about Mavis is he did lose some weight from last year, which could have attributed to a few of those misses not being able to swing his leg all the way through. So the fact that he got himself into a little better shape could bode well for him this season.
Yeah, still the thicker kicker, but just maybe just 1C instead of 2Cs and thicker. Now, the punting game was a problem for Missouri a year ago. They rotated between Sean Kading, who was your kickoff guy, and Stonehouse, Jack Stonehouse. Neither one of them did much of anything. So, was it Riley Williams, I believe? It got brought in from the FCS level, and he was among the best at that level. But then Luke Bauer is challenging him, and they're both doing all right. Neither one is awesome, but they're both doing okay, which frankly is progress from a year ago. And then it's all about putting together. It's just not letting guys return it, because that's another thing with this defense. How many times were they defending a short field because the punt team sucked, right? So with the offense, with the punt team, if they can at least move the ball, field position, make the defense have them go out there and saying, all right, cool, you got to beat us 85 yards if you want a touchdown instead of 65 or even fewer, right? Make the other team make plays, guys. That's the name of the game.
Exactly. And I'm looking to see our kick return game be much improved this year as well. I expect to see Burden back there returning a lot of the punts, maybe even some of the kickoffs. With the improved line, maybe get some better blocking out there for him too. It could really improve our field position, both sides of the ball. So something to keep an eye on as the season gets started and how well they perform. The other key this year I'm looking at, with Drink no longer calling the offense and having control of the sidelines, is seeing less penalties.
Yes.
There were a lot of errors, stupid mistakes, too many men on the field, things like that. With him not calling the offense and being able to control everything over there, I expect to see that cut way down, which will be much improved from last year, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a chance that Kirby Moore taking over as offensive coordinator and play calling impacts this program in a variety of ways, aside from just having a more dynamic offense. So that, yeah, I think that's worth keeping an eye out for sure.
Anyway, that's all we have for this video. Thank you for watching Under the Arc Sports, and stay tuned because we'll have our predictions for the season coming up here soon.